Little girl shows the stain left on her bed after her father visited her room. Police officer calls 911 in tears. Before we dive into this incredible story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. You're about to witness a journey that will touch your heart and remind you of the power of love, understanding, and community. Enjoy the story. In the quiet town of Millbrook, Ohio, where everyone knows their neighbor's name and Sunday dinners still bring families together, 67-year-old Eleanor Mason was living what she thought would be her golden years. Her silver hair was always perfectly pinned, and her gentle hands had comforted 3 generations of her family. But nothing could have prepared her for the morning that would change everything. It was a crisp Tuesday in October when Eleanor heard something that made her heart stop, a sound she'd never heard from her 8-year-old granddaughter Maya before. It wasn't crying exactly, but a deep, soul-shaking whimper that seemed to come from somewhere far beyond her years. Eleanor rushed to Maya's small bedroom, her arthritis forgotten in her panic. What she found there would haunt her for weeks to come. Maya, usually so calm in her own special way, was sitting on her bed, rocking back and forth, pointing at a dark red stain on her white sheets with trembling fingers. "Oh my goodness, sweetheart," Eleanor whispered, her voice catching in her throat. Maya had autism and rarely spoke, but her big, brown eyes were trying to tell Eleanor something urgent, something frightening. Beth, Maya's mother, appeared in the doorway, still in her work uniform from the overnight shift at the diner. Her face went pale when she saw the scene before her. The red mark looked fresh, and Maya's distressed state sent chills down both women's spines. "Mom, I don't understand," Beth stammered, her hands shaking as she approached her daughter. "Maya, honey, what happened? Can you show me?" But Maya just continued rocking, her small finger still pointing at the stain, her eyes filled with something that looked like fear mixed with confusion. After Maya's father had visited the day before, a rare occurrence that Beth had hoped would help her daughter, this discovery felt like a nightmare. Eleanor's protective instincts kicked in immediately. "Beth, we need to call someone," Eleanor said firmly, though her voice trembled. "This isn't normal, and Maya is trying to tell us something important." 20 minutes later, Officer Jack Coleman pulled into their driveway. At 58, Jack had seen almost everything in his 30 years on the force, and he was looking forward to retirement next month. He expected this to be another routine call, but something about the urgency in Eleanor's voice had struck him as different. As Jack walked up the cracked concrete path to their modest home, he noticed the carefully tended flower garden and the small wheelchair ramp Eleanor had built herself. This was clearly a family that cared deeply for each other, despite whatever challenges they faced. But when Jack saw Maya's condition and the mysterious stain, his experienced instincts told him this case would be anything but routine. And he had no idea that this little girl with the silent voice was about to teach him the most important lesson of his entire career. Officer Jack Coleman stepped into the Mason home, his trained eyes immediately taking in every detail. The living room was small, but immaculately clean, with handmade quilts draped over worn furniture and family photos covering every available surface. The scent of freshly baked cookies still lingered in the air, a stark contrast to the tension that had settled over the household. Maya remained on her bed, still pointing at the troubling stain, her small body trembling. Jack had worked with children before, but there was something uniquely heartbreaking about watching this little girl struggle to communicate something so important without words. "Mrs. Mason," Jack addressed Eleanor gently, "can you walk me through exactly what happened this morning?" Eleanor wrung her hands nervously. "I always check on Maya when I wake up. She usually sleeps so peacefully, but today..." Her voice trailed off as she looked toward her granddaughter. "I've never seen her like this, Officer Coleman. In all the years I've cared for her, she's never been this upset." Beth stood in the corner, her face pale and drawn. Jack noticed how she avoided making direct eye contact with him, and how her hand shook slightly when she spoke. "Her father visited yesterday," Beth said quietly. "It was supposed to be a good day. Maya hasn't seen David in almost 6 months, and I thought maybe it would help her." "How did the visit go?" Jack asked, his voice remaining gentle but professional. Beth's eyes darted toward Eleanor before answering. It seemed fine. They spent a couple of hours together. David brought her some art supplies. Maya loves to draw. They were in her room most of the time. Jack made a note in his small notebook, but something in Beth's tone didn't quite sit right with him. 30 years of police work had taught him to listen not just to what people said, but to what they didn't say. "Mrs. Patterson," he addressed Beth directly, "I know this is difficult, but I need to ask, has this happened before? Any unexplained marks or unusual behavior from Maya?" The question hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Eleanor and Beth exchanged a look that Jack couldn't quite decipher, but it was loaded with meaning. "Well," Eleanor began hesitantly, "Maya has always been delicate. She bruises easily, and sometimes she has little accidents. But nothing like this, officer. Nothing that ever seemed what?" Jack prompted gently. "Seemed scary," Eleanor finished, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack approached Maya's bedside slowly, crouching down to her level. The little girl's dark hair fell in soft waves around her face, and her big brown eyes held an intelligence that shone despite her inability to speak. "Hi, Maya," he said softly. "My name is Jack. I'm here to help figure out what's wrong, okay?" Maya stopped rocking for a moment and looked directly at him. It was brief, but in that instant, Jack saw something in her eyes that made his heart skip. Fear, yes, but also a desperate need to be understood. Maya slowly reached under her pillow and pulled out a piece of paper. It was one of her drawings, created with the new art supplies her father had brought. Jack studied it carefully. It showed stick figures that appeared to be a family, but there was something unsettling about the image. Red crayon was heavily applied in several areas, and one of the figures seemed to be reaching toward another in a way that felt wrong. "Maya, sweetie, can you me who these people are?" Jack asked, pointing to the drawing. Maya's finger traced over the figures, then suddenly she grabbed Jack's hand and placed it on the drawing, right over the red marks. Her eyes filled with tears, and she looked directly at him with an expression that seemed to say, "Please understand." Eleanor gasped softly. She's never done that before. Reached out to touch someone like that. Maya usually doesn't like physical contact with strangers. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. This little girl was trying desperately to communicate something important, and he was beginning to suspect that this case was far more complex than a simple household accident. As he prepared to ask more questions, Maya suddenly stood up on her bed and pointed not just at the stain, but at something else. A small dark spot on the wall near her headboard that none of them had noticed before. "Oh my God," Beth whispered, her hand covering her mouth. "What is that?" But Eleanor wasn't looking at the wall. She was staring at Maya with the expression of dawning realization and horror. "Beth," Eleanor said slowly, her voice trembling, "we need to tell Officer Coleman about the doctor visits. All of them." Jack looked between the two women, sensing that he was about to uncover something that would change everything about this case. But Maya wasn't finished. She picked up another drawing from under her pillow, one that made all three adults freeze in shock. The second drawing Maya held up made the room fall completely silent. Unlike her usual colorful artwork filled with flowers and rainbows, this picture was drawn entirely in dark pencil. It showed a man's figure standing next to a bed, with red marks scattered around the scene like fallen leaves. Jack's experienced eyes studied the drawing carefully while Eleanor's face went white. Beth suddenly sat down heavily in the small wooden chair by Maya's desk, as if her legs could no longer support her. "Maya drew this yesterday evening," Beth whispered, her voice barely audible. "After David left, I found it on the kitchen table this morning, but I was rushing to get ready for work and I didn't really look at it closely." "Beth," Eleanor said firmly, though her voice shook, "you need to tell Officer Coleman about David, about why he really stopped visiting." Jack noticed the way Beth's hands clenched into fists at her mother's words. There was clearly a story here that went much deeper than a simple family visit gone wrong. "Mrs. Patterson, I need you to help me understand." Jack said gently, settling into a more comfortable position near Maya's bed. What happened between you and your ex-husband? Why had it been 6 months since his last visit? Beth took a shaky breath, glancing at Maya, who had returned to her quiet rocking but seemed to be listening intently to every word. David has problems, Beth began slowly. He wasn't always like this. When we first got married, he was wonderful with Maya. Even after we learned about her autism, he seemed to accept it better than I did at first. Eleanor moved closer to her daughter, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. But then he started drinking more, Beth continued, and he became different, angry at little things. He would get frustrated when Maya couldn't respond the way he wanted her to. He never hurt her physically, she added quickly, looking at Jack with desperate eyes, but he would get so upset when she couldn't speak or wouldn't look at him. Jack nodded encouragingly, sensing there was more to the story. The last time he was here back in April, he had been drinking. Not heavily, but enough that I could smell it. Maya became very agitated when he raised his voice at her for not responding to his questions. That's when I told him he couldn't visit anymore unless he got help. And yesterday, Jack prompted. Yesterday, he came to the door sober. He'd been in some kind of counseling program, he said. He brought those art supplies as a peace offering and begged me to let him spend time with Maya. He seemed genuine, like the man I married. Eleanor's expression suggested she hadn't agreed with Beth's decision to allow the visit. Mom thought I was making a mistake, Beth admitted, reading her mother's face. But Maya is his daughter too. I thought maybe if he was getting help. Jack turned his attention back to Maya, who had been quietly organizing her art supplies. While they talked, he noticed something interesting. She was separating the new supplies David had brought from her older ones, creating 2 distinct piles. Maya, Jack said softly, can you show me which crayons you used for this drawing? Maya looked at him for a moment, then reached for the older art supplies, the ones that weren't from her father. She held up a red crayon that was worn down to almost nothing, then pointed at the new, unused red crayon from David's gift. She didn't use the new supplies for this drawing, Eleanor observed with growing concern. She used her old crayons. That means she drew this before her father's visit, Jack finished, feeling a chill run through him. Maya, sweetie, when did you draw this picture? Maya stood up again and walked to her small calendar on the wall. It was covered with stickers marking special days. She pointed to the previous Monday, a full week before her father's visit. The 3 adults exchanged bewildered looks. But that doesn't make sense, Beth said, confusion clear in her voice. How could she draw something that happened a week before it happened? Jack studied the drawing again, this time with fresh eyes. The figure in the drawing. Could it actually be David? The hair color was wrong and the build seemed different. And there was something else in the corner of the drawing he hadn't noticed before. A small symbol that looked like a medical cross. Mrs. Mason, Jack said, addressing Eleanor. You mentioned earlier that we need to talk about doctor visits. Has Maya been seeing anyone recently? Any medical professionals who might visit the house? Eleanor and Beth exchanged another one of those loaded looks. There was Dr. Harrison, Eleanor said slowly. He's been coming to check on Maya's condition. But he's such a nice man, Officer Coleman. He's been helping families in our area for years. What kind of doctor is he? Jack asked, though something in his gut was already telling him the answer wouldn't be simple. He specializes in children with special needs, Beth explained. He makes house calls for families who can't afford regular clinic visits. Our insurance has been difficult about covering Maya's care. Maya suddenly grabbed Jack's arm and pointed again at the drawing, then at her calendar, then at the stain on her bed. Her eyes were wide with urgency, as if she was trying to tell him that time was running out. Jack looked at the drawing one more time, and suddenly, a terrible possibility began to form in his mind. What if Maya's drawing wasn't about her father's visit at all? Within 2 hours of Jack's visit to the Mason home, the news had spread through Millbrook like wildfire. In small towns, secrets have a way of growing legs and walking from house to house, often becoming something entirely different by the time they reach the last doorstep. At Miller's General Store, the morning coffee crowd was buzzing with speculation. Margaret Henderson, who lived 3 houses down from the Masons, was holding court near the counter. "I always thought something was off about that family," she whispered loudly enough for half the store to hear. "That poor little girl never speaks, and Beth works all those odd hours. And now this business with the police." Jack had intended to conduct his investigation quietly, but he quickly realized that in Millbrook, quiet investigations were about as possible as silent thunderstorms. His next stop was the police station, where he hoped to find some peace to review Maya's case. But Chief Reynolds was waiting for him with a concerned expression. "Jack, I've been getting calls about the Mason family all morning," Chief Reynolds said, closing his office door behind them. "What exactly are we dealing with here?" Jack sat down heavily in the worn leather chair across from his chief's desk. "Honestly, Tom, I'm not sure yet, but something doesn't feel right. There's more to this story than what's on the surface." "The town council is already asking questions," Chief Reynolds continued. "The Hendersons called wanting to know if their children are safe. Mrs. Petty from the school board wants to know if Maya should be removed from her classroom." Removed. Jack felt his protective instincts flare. "Chief, we don't even know what we're dealing with yet. That little girl has been through enough without having her whole world turned upside down based on gossip." Chief Reynolds nodded, but his expression remained troubled. "I understand that, Jack, but you're retiring next week. Whatever this is, it needs to be resolved quickly and cleanly. The last thing this town needs is a scandal that drags on for months." Jack left the station feeling more determined than ever to get to the truth. His first stop was the Millbrook Elementary School, where he hoped to speak with Maya's teacher without drawing too much attention. Mrs. Sarah Chen had been teaching special needs children for 15 years, and Jack could immediately tell she genuinely cared about her students. Her classroom was filled with colorful sensory tools and adapted learning materials that showed her dedication to helping children like Maya. "Maya is one of my most gentle students," Mrs. Chen explained as they sat in her empty classroom during lunch break. "She communicates primarily through art and gestures, but she's incredibly smart. She understands everything that's said to her. Has she seemed different lately? Any changes in behavior or new drawings that concerned you?" Mrs. Chen hesitated. "Actually, yes. About 2 weeks ago, Maya started drawing these strange pictures. They were different from her usual work, darker, more chaotic. I mentioned it to the school counselor, but with our limited resources." She pulled out a folder from her desk drawer. Inside were several of Maya's recent drawings, all featuring similar themes to what Jack had seen at the house. Red marks, shadowy figures, and that same medical cross symbol. "Mrs. Chen, do you recognize this symbol?" Jack pointed to the cross in one of the drawings. "It looks medical, doesn't it? Maya has had several doctor visits recently. There's been some concern about her health insurance coverage, so her family has been seeing a doctor who makes house calls." Jack felt his pulse quicken. "Do you know the doctor's name?" "Dr. Harrison, I believe. He's been quite helpful to several families in our district who can't afford regular medical care. The school nurse speaks very highly of him." As Jack was preparing to leave the school, Mrs. Chen called out to him. "Officer Coleman, there's one more thing. Last week, Maya did something she's never done before. She grabbed my hand and led me to the calendar, pointing to today's date. Then she pointed to herself and shook her head very firmly, like she was trying to tell me something important about today." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. Today. Maya had somehow known that today would be significant. On his drive back through town, Jack noticed something he hadn't paid attention to before. 3 other houses on different streets had the same small medical cross symbol that Maya had been drawing. They were displayed in windows like some kind of identification marker. His radio crackled to life. "Unit 12, we have another call from the Mason residence. The grandmother is requesting immediate assistance." Jack's heart raced as he made a U-turn and sped back toward Eleanor's house, his mind spinning with questions. Had something happened to Maya? Had Dr. Harrison returned for another visit? As he pulled into the driveway, He could see Eleanor standing in the doorway, her face pale with worry. But it wasn't Maya who was in distress. Beth was sitting on the front steps holding a letter in her trembling hands, tears streaming down her face. "Officer Coleman," Eleanor called out as he approached. "You need to see this. Beth found this letter in Maya's backpack. It's from Dr. Harrison, and it changes everything we, thought we knew about Maya's condition." Jack took the letter from Beth's shaking hands, and as he read the first few lines, he realized that this quiet little town was hiding secrets much darker than anyone had imagined. And Maya, in her silent wisdom, had been trying to warn them all along. Jack's hands trembled slightly as he unfolded the letter from Dr. Harrison. The letterhead looked official enough, with embossed medical symbols and a professional address, but something about the wording made his police instincts tingle with unease. "Dear Mrs. Patterson, Maya's condition requires immediate and ongoing treatment. The episodes we've discussed are becoming more frequent and will worsen without intervention. I've scheduled additional home visits to monitor her progress. Please ensure Maya is available for examination this Thursday at 3 p.m. Do not discuss these visits with outside medical professionals, as conflicting treatments could be dangerous for her condition. Dr. Charles Harrison, M.D." "Beth," Jack said carefully, looking up from the letter, "what exactly has Dr. Harrison told you about Maya's condition?" Beth wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, leaving streaks across her cheeks. "He said Maya has a rare blood disorder that causes spontaneous bleeding episodes. He explained that it's triggered by stress and that children with autism are more susceptible to it." Eleanor shifted uncomfortably beside her daughter. "Officer Coleman, I have to tell something. I've been keeping quiet because I didn't want to worry Beth, but I've been researching Maya's supposed condition online, and I can't find anything that matches what Dr. Harrison described." Jack felt his heartbeat quicken. "What did you find instead?" "That's just it. I didn't find anything. No medical journals, no support groups, no other families dealing with this exact combination of symptoms. It's like this condition doesn't exist." Beth looked up sharply at her mother. "Mom, are you saying Dr. Harrison has been lying to us? Why would he do that? He doesn't even charge us for the visits." "That's another thing that bothers me," Eleanor continued. "A specialist who makes house calls for free? Beth, we both know that doesn't happen in today's medical system." Jack studied the letter again, this time looking more carefully at the details. The address was local, but he didn't recognize the street name. The phone number had a Millbrook area code, but something about the format seemed off. "Mrs. Patterson, I need you to think carefully. When did these episodes first start happening with Maya?" Beth considered the question. "About 3 months ago. Maya had what looked like a nosebleed that wouldn't stop. I was panicking, ready to take her to the emergency room, when Dr. Harrison appeared at our door. He said he'd heard about our situation through the school nurse and wanted to help." "He just showed up?" Jack asked, his concern growing. "Yes, and thank goodness he did. The bleeding stopped almost immediately after he gave Maya some medication. He explained that the condition was manageable with proper care, and that emergency room doctors wouldn't understand how to treat it properly." Eleanor reached for her purse and pulled out a small notebook. "Officer Coleman, I've been keeping track of Maya's episodes. They don't happen randomly like Dr. Harrison suggested. They happen every time he visits, usually within 12 hours of his departure." Jack felt his stomach drop. "Have you mentioned this pattern to Dr. Harrison?" "I tried to, but he said it was normal for the condition to flare up after medical examinations due to stress. He insisted that stopping the treatments would make Maya much worse." Jack looked toward the house, where Maya was visible through the window, sitting quietly at the kitchen table with her art supplies. Even from a distance, he could see that she appeared healthier and more alert than she had during any of Dr. Harrison's supposed episodes. "Beth, I need to ask you something difficult. Has Maya ever had any of these bleeding episodes when Dr. Harrison wasn't involved? Before he started treating her, or on days when he wasn't scheduled to visit?" Beth thought for a long moment, then shook her head slowly. No, actually she hasn't. But that doesn't mean anything, does it?" Maybe his treatments are preventing them from happening naturally. Jack exchanged a meaningful look with Eleanor, who was clearly thinking the same thing he was. Mrs. Patterson, I'm going to need you to think very carefully about Dr. Harrison's visits. Did he ever give Maya any medications that made her sleepy? Did he ever ask to be alone with her during examinations? Well, yes, Beth said, looking confused. He said the medications could make her drowsy, and that parent anxiety could interfere with proper medical assessment, so it was better if I waited in another room. But Officer Coleman, you're scaring me. Are you suggesting that Dr. Harrison has been hurting Maya somehow? Before Jack could answer, Maya appeared at the front door holding another drawing. This one was different from the others. It showed a man in a white coat standing over a small figure on a bed, with a bag of medical supplies nearby. But the most disturbing detail was what the man was holding in his hand, a small vial with a red liquid inside. Maya walked directly to Jack and placed the drawing in his hands, then pointed to the letter from Dr. Harrison, then to the drawing, then back to Jack. Her message was unmistakably clear. The man in the white coat and Dr. Harrison were the same person. Officer Coleman, Eleanor said quietly, reading the situation. Dr. Harrison is scheduled to visit Maya tomorrow afternoon. What are we going to do? Jack looked at Maya, who was watching him with those intelligent brown eyes that seemed to hold far more understanding than any 8-year-old should possess. She had been trying to warn them all along, using the only language she had available to her. We're going to be ready for him, Jack said firmly. And this time, Dr. Harrison is going to get a very different kind of house call. But first, Jack needed to find out exactly who Dr. Charles Harrison really was, and why he had targeted the Mason family. That evening, Jack sat in his car outside the Millbrook Medical Center, staring at the building directory through the rain-streaked windshield. Dr. Charles Harrison's name was nowhere to be found on the official list of practicing physicians. His 30 years of police work had taught him to trust his instincts, and right now, every instinct was screaming that something was terribly wrong. Back at the Mason house, Eleanor was tucking Maya into bed while Beth sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers and her laptop computer. Mom, I've been going through every medical document we have, Beth said, her voice heavy with exhaustion and worry. Look at this. Eleanor joined her daughter at the table, adjusting her reading glasses to examine the papers Beth had spread out. These are Maya's medical records from before Dr. Harrison started treating her. Look at her blood work from 6 months ago. Everything was completely normal. No signs of any blood disorder whatsoever. Eleanor picked up a laboratory report, studying the numbers carefully. Beth, I may not be a doctor, but these results show a perfectly healthy little girl. How did we not see this before? Because I trusted him, Beth whispered, tears beginning to form in her eyes. When Maya started having those episodes, I was so scared. And Dr. Harrison seemed to have all the answers. He was so confident, so professional. He made me feel like I was finally doing something right for my daughter. Eleanor reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. Honey, you were doing everything right. You were protecting Maya the best way you knew how. You couldn't have known that someone would take advantage of your love for her. Beth pulled out another document from the pile. Mom, look at this. It's a receipt from the pharmacy downtown. Dr. Harrison told me he was giving Maya specialized vitamins, but I picked up her prescription yesterday out of curiosity. According to the pharmacist, these aren't vitamins at all. What are they? They're iron, supplements. Really strong ones. The kind that can cause nausea and, if given in large doses. Beth's voice trailed off as the horrible realization hit her. They can cause what, Beth? They can cause symptoms that look exactly like what Maya was experiencing. The fatigue, the pale complexion. And if you give too much... Beth covered her mouth with her hand. Oh God, Mom. If you give a child too much iron, it can cause internal bleeding. Eleanor felt her world tilt sideways. You mean Dr. Harrison was making Maya sick on purpose? Before Beth could answer, they heard footsteps on the front porch. Both women froze, listening intently. A gentle knock came at the door, followed by a familiar voice. Mrs. Patterson? It's Dr. Harrison. I know it's late, but I was in the neighborhood and wanted to check on Maya after yesterday's episode. Eleanor and Beth stared at each other in terror. Dr. Harrison wasn't supposed to visit until tomorrow afternoon. Don't answer it, Eleanor whispered urgently. Call Officer Coleman. But as Beth reached for her phone, they heard the sound of a key turning in the lock. Dr. Harrison had somehow gotten a key to their house. The front door opened slowly, and a tall man in a white medical coat stepped inside, carrying his familiar black medical bag. In the lamplight, he looked exactly like the figure Maya had been drawing. Kind face, gentle smile, but something cold and calculating in his eyes. Mrs. Patterson, I hope you don't mind me letting myself in. You gave me a key for emergencies, remember? I was concerned when you didn't answer the door. Beth didn't remember giving him a key, but so much of the past few months felt blurry and confusing now. Dr. Harrison, Beth said, trying to keep her voice steady. Maya is sleeping. Perhaps you could come back tomorrow as scheduled. Dr. Harrison set his medical bag down on the coffee table and began removing supplies. I'm afraid this can't wait, Mrs. Patterson. Maya's condition has been progressing more rapidly than I anticipated. I need to administer her medication. Immediately, Eleanor stepped protectively in front of the hallway that led to Maya's room. Doctor, perhaps you could explain more about Maya's condition. We've been doing some research and we have some questions. Dr. Harrison's smile never wavered, but something shifted in his eyes. Research can be dangerous for families dealing with rare conditions, Mrs. Mason. Internet information is often inaccurate and can lead to poor decisions about a child's care. But we can't find any information about Maya's specific condition anywhere, Beth pressed, finding courage she didn't know she possessed. Not in any medical journals, not in any support groups. Dr. Harrison began preparing a syringe, his movements becoming more deliberate and urgent. That's exactly why you need to trust my expertise, Mrs. Patterson. Maya's case is so rare that most medical professionals wouldn't know how to treat her properly. At that moment, Maya appeared in the hallway, rubbing her sleepy eyes. When she saw Dr. Harrison preparing the syringe, her entire body went rigid with fear. She ran to Eleanor and buried her face against her grandmother's legs, then slowly turned to look at Dr. Harrison. With an expression that was no longer confused or trusting, for the first time in her life, Maya spoke. No, she said clearly, her small voice cutting through the tension like a knife. No more hurt. Dr. Harrison's mask finally slipped, and the three women could see exactly who he really was. The moment Maya spoke those two powerful words, no more hurt, the atmosphere in the room shifted dramatically. Dr. Harrison's gentle facade crumbled, revealing a man who clearly hadn't expected his young patient to find her voice at such a crucial moment. Eleanor pulled Maya closer, while Beth stepped forward with newfound determination. I think you should leave, Dr. Harrison, now. But instead of leaving, Dr. Harrison calmly continued preparing his syringe. Mrs. Patterson, you don't understand the severity of Maya's condition. Without this treatment, she could experience a serious medical high. Emergency tonight? The only emergency here is you, Eleanor said firmly, reaching for the phone on the side table. Dr. Harrison moved quickly, placing his hand over Eleanor's to stop her from dialing. I wouldn't recommend involving outside authorities, Mrs. Mason. They won't understand the, delicate nature of Maya's treatment protocol. At that moment, car headlights swept across the front window. Jack Coleman's patrol car pulled into the driveway, and Dr. Harrison's confident expression finally showed a crack of concern. Expecting someone? He asked, his voice losing its professional warmth. Officer Coleman has been investigating Maya's case, Beth replied, standing taller. He's very interested in meeting you. Through the window, they could see Jack approaching the house, but he wasn't alone. Behind him walked a woman in a business suit carrying an official-looking briefcase. Dr. Harrison quickly packed his medical supplies back into his bag. This is most unfortunate timing. I'll need to reschedule Maya's treatment for a more appropriate time. Actually, Doctor, Jack's voice came from the doorway as he entered without knocking. Your timing couldn't be better. This is Agent Sarah Martinez from the State Medical Board. She's been looking forward to meeting you. Dr. Harrison's face went pale, but he maintained his composure. I'm afraid there's been some misunderstanding, officer. I'm simply here to provide medical care for a patient with special needs. Agent Martinez stepped forward, pulling documents from her briefcase. Mr. Harrison, and yes, I said Mr., we've been tracking your activities across 3 counties. You're not a licensed physician, and you've been targeting families with vulnerable children for months. Eleanor gasped, while Beth sank into the nearest chair. What do you mean he's not a doctor? Charles Harrison is a former medical technician who lost his certification 2 years ago for unauthorized medical procedures, Agent Martinez explained. He's been posing as a specialist in rare childhood conditions, specifically targeting families who can't afford regular medical care. Jack addressed the family while keeping his eyes on Harrison. We found his real medical office this afternoon. It's actually a storage unit on the outskirts of town. He's been using stolen medical equipment and expired medications to create artificial symptoms in children. But why? Beth asked, her voice breaking. Why would someone do this to innocent children? Agent Martinez pulled out another file. Financial fraud primarily. He bills state insurance programs for expensive treatments of non-existent conditions. But in Maya's case, we believe it goes deeper than money. Harrison suddenly stood up, grabbing his medical bag. This is harassment of a medical professional trying to help underserved communities. I'll be filing complaints with the appropriate authorities. Actually, Jack said, moving to block the door, you'll be coming with us to answer some questions about the other families you've been treating. Agent Martinez opened her briefcase wider, revealing photographs of several children. Mr. Harrison, do you recognize these children? Tommy Chen, age 6. Lisa Williams, age 7. Marcus Johnson, age 9. All diagnosed by you with the same mysterious blood condition as Maya. Eleanor studied the photographs, her heart breaking for the other families who had been deceived. Are these children okay? They are now, Agent Martinez replied. Once they stopped receiving Mr. Harrison's treatments, their symptoms disappeared completely, just like Maya's have over the past day. Beth looked at Maya, who was indeed looking brighter and more alert than she had in months. Maya, sweetheart, do you understand what's happening? Maya nodded solemnly, then walked to her art supplies and quickly drew a simple picture. It showed a man in handcuffs and a little girl holding hands with her family, surrounded by flowers and sunshine. She's been trying to warn us all along, Eleanor realized, tears streaming down her face. Our brave little girl knew something was wrong, even when we couldn't see it. As Jack placed handcuffs on Harrison, the fake doctor looked back at Maya with something that might have been remorse. I never intended to hurt anyone seriously, he said quietly. I thought I was providing a service to families who couldn't afford real medical care. By making their children sick? Beth asked incredulously. Agent Martinez gathered her files as Harrison was led toward the door. Mrs. Patterson, Mrs. Mason, we'll need to conduct some interviews over the next few days, but Maya is going to be fine. We'll make sure she gets proper medical evaluation to ensure there are no lasting effects. As the law enforcement officers prepared to leave with Harrison, Maya tugged on Jack's uniform sleeve. When he bent down to her level, she whispered something in his ear that made him smile for the first time all day. She says thank you for believing her pictures. Jack relayed to the family. But as they watched the police car drive away, Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that their ordeal wasn't quite over yet, because Maya had just handed her another drawing, one that showed several other houses in town with the same medical cross symbol in their windows. The next morning, Maya sat at the kitchen table with a box of fresh crayons, drawing with more energy and focus than Eleanor had seen in months. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and for the first time in a long while, the house felt peaceful. But Maya's latest drawing was anything but peaceful. It showed multiple houses throughout Millbrook, each marked with that familiar medical cross symbol, and stick figures of children who looked sad and tired. Maya, sweetheart, Beth said gently, sitting beside her daughter. Are you trying to tell us about other children who need help? Maya nodded emphatically, then pointed to different parts of her drawing. She had carefully labeled each house with numbers, 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 7. Eleanor studied the drawing carefully. "Beth, I think she's showing us all the houses where Mr. Harrison was pretending to treat children." The phone rang, interrupting their examination of Maya's artwork. Beth answered to find Jack Coleman on the other end, his voice urgent but kind. "Mrs. Patterson, we need Maya's help. Agent Martinez discovered that Harrison kept detailed records of all his patients, and Maya's drawings are helping us identify the families faster than any database could. Would you be willing to bring her down to the station? We've set up a comfortable room where she can draw while we work." An hour later, Maya found herself in a bright, cheerful room at the police station, surrounded by art supplies and several adults who hung on her every crayon stroke. Agent Martinez had brought in a child psychologist, Dr. Rebecca Stone, who specialized in helping children communicate through art. "Maya has an extraordinary ability to observe and remember details," Dr. Stone explained to the group. "Many children with autism have exceptional visual memory, and Maya has been using her art as a sophisticated communication system." Maya worked steadily, creating a map of Millbrook that was more accurate than any official town plan. She marked each house where she remembered seeing Harrison's car and added details that only someone who had been paying very close attention could know. At the Williams house on Maple Street, she drew a little girl with pigtails who always looked tired. At the Chen residence on Oak Avenue, she showed a boy who had stopped playing outside. Each drawing told a story of a child whose life had been disrupted by Harrison's deception. "Maya," Agent Martinez said gently, "can you help us understand how you knew Mr. Harrison was hurting children? What made you realize he wasn't really helping?" Maya thought for a moment, then began drawing again. This time she created a series of pictures that showed the progression of her own experience with Harrison. The first drawing showed her feeling sick after his visits. The second showed her hiding in her room when she heard his car. The third showed her trying to tell her family through her artwork that something was wrong. Art. Stone watched Maya work with fascination. "She's showing us her thought process. Maya, you figured out that the medicine was making you feel worse instead of better, didn't you?" Maya nodded, then drew another picture that made all the adults gasp. It showed Harrison preparing his syringes, but Maya had drawn herself watching him through a crack in the door. She had been observing his methods, gathering evidence in the only way she could. "She's been conducting her own investigation," Jack realized with amazement. "Maya, you're braver than any detective I've ever worked with." Beth knelt beside her daughter's chair, tears in her eyes. "Maya, I'm so sorry I didn't understand what you were trying to tell us. I should have listened to your pictures sooner." Maya looked at her mother with those wise brown eyes and did something that surprised everyone. She spoke again, her voice small but clear. "Not your fault, Mommy. Bad man tricked everyone." The room fell silent as Maya continued speaking, her words coming slowly but with increasing confidence. "I see things. I remember things. Pictures in my head get mixed up with crayon pictures. But Jack believed my pictures. Jack understands." "Maya language." Dr. Stone wiped away tears. "Maya, your way of communicating isn't broken or wrong. It's just different, and it's actually helped save other children. You're a hero." Over the next 2 hours, Maya's drawings helped the team identify 7 families who had been targeted by Harrison. Each family received immediate visits from real medical professionals and social workers, ensuring that the children received proper care and that the families understood they had been victims of fraud, not neglectful parents. As the day wore on, Maya created one more drawing that captured everyone's attention. It showed all the children from the affected families playing together in a park, healthy and happy. Above them, she drew a bright sun and the words, "No more scared," in her careful, deliberate handwriting. "Maya," Jack said, sitting beside her, "I have one more question. In your drawings, you showed that you knew something was wrong with Mr. Harrison, but you also drew pictures of hope. How did you know things would get better?" Maya smiled, a real, genuine smile that lit up her entire face. She pointed to a small detail in her latest drawing that no one had noticed. Yet, in the corner of the park scene, she had drawn a police car with a figure that looked remarkably like Jack, and next to him, a family that was clearly the Masons. She had drawn them all together, safe and protected. Because good people help, Maya said simply, and Maya knew Jack was good. People. As they prepared to leave the station, Agent Martinez approached the family with an unexpected proposal. Mrs. Patterson, Mrs. Mason, Maya's unique observational skills and her ability to communicate through art could be invaluable in helping other children who can't speak for themselves. Would you consider letting her work with us on other cases? But before Beth could answer, Maya was already reaching for a fresh piece of paper, ready to help the next child who needed a voice. 2 weeks after Harrison's arrest, the atmosphere in Millbrook has shifted. Maya is no longer seen as different, but as a gifted child who cracked the case. To foster healing, Eleanor hosts a gathering at her home for the 7 families victimized by Harrison. Maya, enthusiastic about the event, prepares art supplies and drawings to welcome the other children. As the families arrive, including the Chens, Williams, and Johnsons, Maya instinctively knows how to connect with each traumatized child. She helps Shy Tommy build structures, encourages Lisa to hum melodies, and gets Marcus interested in games again. Jack Coleman, now retired, watches in amazement as Maya transforms from a withdrawn observer into a natural leader, helping the other children find their voices through play and nonverbal communication. Agent Martinez attends to provide an update. Harrison is cooperating, revealing that his scam targeted vulnerable families across 5 counties who couldn't afford traditional medical care. While the children bond, Dr. Rebecca Stone observes their progress, confirming that shared healing is exactly what they need. Meanwhile, the parents begin to shed their heavy burdens of guilt. They confess their fears of having been bad parents, but Eleanor and Beth reassure them that Harrison specifically exploited their love and desperation. The afternoon culminates in a collaborative art project organized by Maya. Each child paints a section of a canvas, creating a cohesive picture of a community coming together. Inspired by the connection, Maya shows Agent Martinez a drawing labeled Maya's Helper House, proposing a center to support other children who have faced similar struggles. The adults immediately embrace the idea, finding a new purpose in turning their trauma into support for others. However, as they plan, Maya begins a new drawing, hinting that their story is about to reach far beyond Millbrook. 3 days into his retirement, Jack Coleman is pulled back into the investigation by an urgent message from Agent Martinez. At the station, she reveals a disturbing twist. Maya wasn't a random victim. Harrison possessed extensive, intimate details about the Mason family, including financial history and medical records, long before making contact. Martinez deduces that someone provided Harrison with this background information to specifically target them. The situation escalates when Martinez exposes the shocking identity of the collaborator. Financial records prove that Chief Reynolds, Jack's longtime friend and superior, has been receiving payments from Harrison's network. Martinez explains that Reynolds specifically assigned Jack to the case, believing his focus on retirement would lead to a superficial investigation, allowing the operation to continue unchecked. Driven by financial desperation due to his mother's care and his own medical bills, Reynolds had been facilitating the targeting of vulnerable families in Millbrook for over a year. The revelation is interrupted by a frantic call from Eleanor. Chief Reynolds has appeared at the Mason home, demanding to speak with Maya privately to finalize his report. Maya, sensing the danger, has retreated to her room and drawn a new warning picture. Realizing Reynolds likely knows Maya has uncovered the conspiracy, Jack and Martinez race to the house to intercept him. They arrive to find the chief's car empty. Eleanor reports he went to the backyard, ostensibly to check for evidence near Maya's window. Inside, Beth guards the bedroom door. They enter to find Maya on the phone, calmly reporting the bad policeman, having deduced the threat on her own. However, looking out the window, Jack and Martinez freeze. Chief Reynolds is standing in the backyard. But he isn't alone, signaling a dangerous escalation in the conspiracy. Chapter 11. The conspiracy unravels. Through Maya's bedroom window, they could see Chief Reynolds talking quietly with a woman in a dark business suit. The woman looked familiar, but from their angle, it was difficult to make out her face clearly. "Who is Maya talking to on the phone?" Agent Martinez whispered urgently. Maya looked up at them with those intelligent brown eyes and handed the phone to Jack. On the other end was a voice he recognized. Dr. Rebecca Stone, the child psychologist. "Jack, Maya called me because she remembered something important." Dr. Stone's voice came through clearly. "She's been drawing pictures of this woman for weeks, but we never understood what they meant. The woman has been visiting other families in town, posing as a social services supervisor." Jack took the phone while keeping his eyes on the figures in the backyard. "Dr. Stone, Maya's in danger right now. Chief Reynolds is here, and we believe he's part of Harrison's operation. Jack, listen to me carefully." Maya figured out something that we missed. The woman with Chief Reynolds is Sandra Walsh. She works for the county social services department, but she's been falsifying reports about families to make them appear more vulnerable to predators like Harrison. Agent Martinez grabbed her radio to call for backup, but Jack motioned for her to wait. They needed to understand the full scope of the conspiracy before making any moves. Maya tugged on Jack's sleeve and handed him another drawing. This one showed the social services woman visiting different houses, taking notes, and then meeting with Harrison and Chief Reynolds. In Maya's artistic detective work, she had documented an entire network of adults who were working together to exploit vulnerable families. "Maya, sweetheart," Jack whispered. "How long have you been watching these people?" "Maya sees everything," she replied simply. "Adults think Maya doesn't understand, but Maya understands too much sometimes." Eleanor looked at her granddaughter with a mixture of pride and heartbreak. "She's been protecting us all along, even when we couldn't see the danger ourselves." Through the window, they watched as Sandra Walsh pulled out a tablet and showed something to Chief Reynolds. His body language suggested he was becoming agitated, and they could see him pointing toward the house. "They're planning something," Beth said, her voice tight with fear. "We need to get out of here." But Maya shook her head firmly. "No running," she said with surprising authority. "Maya has plan." She went to her art supplies and quickly drew a simple picture showing the house with stick figures of her family visible in the front windows, while two other stick figures representing the conspirators remained in the backyard. Then she drew arrows showing people arriving from different directions. "Maya, are you saying we should make them think we don't know they're here?" Agent Martinez asked, beginning to understand the child's strategy. Maya nodded and pointed to the phone. "Call good helpers. Maya keeps drawing. Bad people think Maya is just playing." Agent Martinez quietly contacted her backup units, instructing them to surround the property, but remain hidden until her signal. Meanwhile, Maya continued creating what appeared to be innocent children's artwork, but was actually a detailed surveillance report of the conspiracy taking place in her backyard. Jack watched through the window as Sandra Walsh became increasingly animated in her conversation with Chief Reynolds. She seemed to be pressuring him about something, and Reynolds looked uncomfortable with whatever she was proposing. "Dr. Stone," Jack said quietly into the phone, "how many families has this Sandra Walsh been targeting?" "We're still investigating, but it appears she's been identifying vulnerable families across 3 counties and providing their information to various fraudulent schemes. Not just Harrison's medical scam, but fake charity operations, bogus educational programs, even predatory loan schemes targeting single mothers." Maya suddenly stood up and walked to her window, making herself clearly visible to the people in the backyard. When Sandra Walsh looked up and saw her, Maya waved innocently and held up one of her drawings. Not the surveillance pictures, but an innocent-looking drawing of flowers and rainbows. The effect was immediate. Sandra Walsh relaxed visibly, apparently reassured that Maya was just a child playing quietly in her room, unaware of the serious adult conversation taking place below. But what Sandra Walsh couldn't see was that Maya was simultaneously showing Jack a different picture behind her back, one that depicted Sandra Walsh meeting with several men in suits, exchanging briefcases and documents. She's been documenting a money laundering operation, Agent Martinez realized with amazement. Maya, how did you know to watch for these specific details? Pictures don't lie, Maya said simply. People lie with words, but pictures show truth. Eleanor felt tears welling up in her eyes. Our little girl has been conducting an investigation that professional law enforcement missed. Outside, Chief Reynolds suddenly looked toward the house with suspicion, as if sensing he was being watched. Agent Martinez motioned for everyone to step back from the window. It's time, she said quietly into her radio. Move in now. But as the backup units began closing in on the property, Sandra Walsh pulled something from her briefcase that made everyone in Maya's bedroom freeze with terror. She was holding what appeared to be legal documents, and she was pointing directly at Maya's window while speaking urgently to Chief Reynolds. Maya looked at the adults around her and said something that chilled them to the bone. They came to take Maya away. The arrival of Sandra Walsh with legal documents sent a wave of terror through the Mason household. While Agent Martinez urgently prepared her team for a child endangerment intervention to counter the threat, Maya intervened with surprising calm. She handed Jack a drawing depicting suits taking children away, revealing she had overheard the conspirators plotting to use child services as leverage against families who questioned Dr. Harrison's treatments. Maya then unveiled her masterpiece, a hidden poster board containing a comprehensive map of the conspiracy. It connected Harrison, Chief Reynolds, and Walsh with specific dates and details, serving as better evidence than the police had gathered. With Martinez stunned by the accuracy of the work, Maya took charge, using a memorized number to call Mrs. Chen and summon all the affected families to the house. The community responded immediately. The Chens, Williams, and others arrived alongside Dr. Stone and legal advocates. Maya addressed the group, explaining that the villains targeted them because their love made them vulnerable, but that unity would make them unbreakable. Led by Maya, the families stepped onto the front porch, confronting Walsh and Reynolds with a wall of solidarity. The intimidation tactics failed completely against the united front. In a final act of disarming empathy, Maya approached Walsh directly. She handed her a drawing of Walsh, as a young girl holding her mother's hand, reminding her of the innocence she once possessed. The gesture pierced Walsh's cold professional demeanor, cracking her resolve and finally revealing a glimpse of genuine remorse. The drawing Maya handed to Sandra Walsh seemed to freeze time. For a split second, the cold woman stared at the image of her childhood self, and a crack appeared in her armor. But it didn't last. Walsh crumpled the drawing, her professional mask snapping back. "This is touching, but I have legal authority," she stated coldly. "We need to take Maya into protective custody." Chief Reynolds stepped forward, clearly uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, Eleanor." The community instinctively circled Maya, but Walsh pulled out her phone. "I need immediate backup. We have a hostile crowd." Eleanor felt her world collapse. "Agent Martinez, surely you can stop this," Beth pleaded. Martinez looked frustrated. "I can arrest Harrison and Reynolds, but Walsh is using legitimate protocols. Until we prove misconduct in court, her authority to remove children is valid." While the adults argued and police backup arrived, Maya sat on the front steps, drawing frantically. "Maya is finishing the story," she told Dr. Stone. "The story that shows the truth about the bad lady." Chief Reynolds approached Eleanor with remorse. "I never wanted to hurt Maya. I needed the money for my mother's care." "Harmless?" Eleanor snapped. "You helped poison children, Tom. How could you?" "Before he could answer, Maya stood up. "Show everyone," she said, handing her paper to Dr. Stone. The drawing depicted Walsh receiving a briefcase from a man outside a county office. Crucially, Maya had captured the license plate number of the man's car. "Maya saw the bad lady 2 weeks ago. The child," explained simply. Agent Martinez ran the plate immediately. "It belongs to Vincent Cordova," she announced. "He's under FBI investigation for trafficking. Walsh isn't just taking bribes, she's part of a federal conspiracy." Walsh's confidence crumbled. "The child is making things up," autistic. Children aren't reliable witnesses. Maya walked up to her, her voice clear. Maya sees everything. Maya drew the truth. Sandra Walsh, you're under arrest, Martinez declared, handcuffing her. How could a child outsmart a professional operation? Walsh hissed in disbelief. Maya gave a profound answer. Because Maya loves her family, and love makes you see things that bad people think are invisible. As the conspirators were led away, Maya began a new drawing. Storm clouds clearing to reveal a bright sun over Maya's helper house. Eleanor looked at her granddaughter with pride, knowing that while the immediate danger was over, the work of healing the community was just beginning. 6 weeks after the initial arrests, Maya sat in the bright conference room of the newly established Millbrook Community Support Center. The center, once just a crayon drawing titled Maya's Helper House, was now a reality. The room was filled with officials, including FBI agent Rebecca Torres, who was leading the federal investigation. Maya, now 8 years old and growing more confident, was helping them understand the full scope of the conspiracy. Maya, Agent Torres asked, can you help us understand how you knew to document all these specific details? Maya explained that her brain worked like a camera. Dr. Rebecca Stone added that Maya had an extraordinary ability to notice patterns others missed. Jack Coleman, now a volunteer coordinator, presented a timeline based on Maya's art, revealing the group had targeted Millbrook for 18 months due to its rural isolation and vulnerable families. Agent Torres pointed to a specific drawing showing money transfers. Maya revealed she had witnessed these transactions by hiding in places adults ignored, under tables and behind doors. Eleanor noted that the perpetrators had succeeded for so long because they assumed families with special needs, children wouldn't be believed. The investigation took a shocking turn when Torres produced a drawing of an unidentified woman meeting with Harrison. Maya studied the image and pointed toward the distant courthouse. The important lady with the big office, she said. She gave the fake doctor permission to hurt children. Maya drew a map pointing specifically to the office of the county health director, Dr. Patricia Wells. The room fell silent. This revelation meant the corruption went to the very top of the local government. Agent Torres immediately began coordinating a significant expansion of the investigation. As the meeting concluded, Maya shared a hopeful drawing titled No More Scared Children, depicting a safe future. However, she wasn't finished. She pulled Agent Torres aside for a final chilling whisper. Maya needs to tell you about the other children, she said quietly. The ones who got taken away before Maya learned how to draw the truth. Agent Torres realized the case was far from over. Maya had just opened the door to a darker chapter, involving victims who hadn't been as fortunate to escape. 1 year later, on a warm spring morning, 9-year-old Maya stood before a packed auditorium at the state capitol in Columbus. Once a child who communicated only through art, she was now ready to address lawmakers, advocates, and families. With Eleanor and Beth watching proudly from the front row, along with Jack Coleman and Dr. Stone, Maya began her speech with confidence. My name is Maya Patterson, and I want to tell you a story about how pictures can save families. Maya displayed her original warning drawing, explaining that when children cannot use words, they can still reveal the truth if adults learn to listen with their eyes. Her evidence had been pivotal. Over the past year, it led to the conviction of 23 people, including Dr. Patricia Wells, and the safe return of 12 children wrongfully removed from their homes. Agent Torres confirmed that the conspiracy had affected over 300 families across 5 states, with Maya's art serving as the key to dismantling the network. Jack Coleman addressed the crowd, admitting Maya taught him that the smallest voice carries the most important message. Dr. Stone then announced the creation of the Maya Patterson Protocol, a system designed to help adults interpret nonverbal communication from children in danger. Maya proudly revealed a drawing of the now real Millbrook Community Support Center, Maya's Helper House, which was actively assisting hundreds of Shikai families. The governor of Ohio declared Maya an honorary child safety ambassador and established Maya Patterson Centers for Child Advocacy in every county. However, the most poignant moment came when Maya addressed the cameras directly. She told children watching that if adults don't understand their words, they should draw pictures. To the adults, she said, "Love makes families strong, truth makes communities safe, and listening with your heart makes everyone brave." As the audience erupted in applause, Maya told her grandmother that the moment felt like drawing a happy ending. The family departed for Millbrook in a van bearing the new center's logo. Maya's persistence had not only saved her family but had revolutionized child safety for an entire state, proving that every story can have a happy ending if people work together to make it true.